Hello! In this video, I will be going into further detail to talk about the dismissing or the avoidant attachment style. Please check out my video that talks about all 4 attachment styles if you would like to get a general overview. This video is specifically about the avoidant attachment style. So the attachment styles are formed with 2 components. The first one is, how do I see myself? Am I worthy of love? Am I a good enough partner? Am I lovable? Am I worthy? How do I see myself? And the second component is, how do I see relationships? How do I view other people? Do I view other people as emotionally overbearing? Do I trust that people are going to try their best to be understanding of me, that they're empathic, that people are generally faithful, people are generally trustworthy, people are generally good? How do I view relationships? Do I think that most relationships suck? Are they terrible? People are miserable? Or do I have good faith in relationships? So with the avoidant or dismissing attachment style, the person might think fairly well of themselves. They have a fairly low anxiety about their worthlessness, about their ability to be loved, their attractiveness. They feel pretty good about themselves. But they have a negative view of other people and a negative view of relationships in general. Now, just because somebody has, a high sense of worth, and they feel like they are lovable, they feel like they're a good catch, a good partner, does not necessarily mean that they're not self-critical. So avoidants tend to be fairly self-critical of themselves and very self-critical of other people as well. It just kind of manifests a little bit different than a person, let's say, with very low self-esteem, with preoccupied or fearful attachment. So the dismissive partners, actually, in media and in society, they're very much placed on a pedestal. We really like this idea of being very autonomous, very independent, not needing anybody. Now a lot of people are having kids of their own and they're career-oriented and focused. And so there's something sexy about this attachment style. There's something that we kind of value as society, we put on a pedestal. And of course, particularly to the anxiously attached, but also to the secure, avoidant style people can be very attractive. Now, with the dismissive avoidant style, it's quite interesting that when we look at infants that are dismissive or avoidantly attached, we see that they don't panic as much when their caregivers leave or their caregivers come back. They have this very cool air about them. So the caregiver, they're going to get upset when the caregiver leaves. When the caregiver comes back and kind of picks the infant up and starts to play with them, they will usually turn their head and look their direction. They're going to try not to make much eye contact. Unlike the anxiously attached infant, that when the caregiver leaves, let's say, and then the caregiver comes back and picks the infant back up, the anxiously attached is not going to be able to stop crying. They're still going to be in this mode like, you left me, I'm alone, I'm so unsafe. So there's this very air of coolness. But when you actually go in and measure the heartbeat, the heart rate of the dismissive and the avoidant, the heart rate of the dismissive is going to be much higher. So actually they are experiencing great distress, maybe even more so than the anxiously attached. But what they've done is they've built deactivating strategies within themselves to be able to block themselves out from feeling that distress and to be able to put on an air of cool. I don't care about anybody. Yeah, I just got out of a relationship, what a bitch she was. And so there's this air of coolness. I don't need anyone. I can do it all on my own. And so that actually tends to be quite sexy, especially to the anxiously attached person as well. which forms that famous anxious avoidant trap, which I'll talk about later. But so the dismissive partner, their thing is that they have a lot of difficulty tolerating and regulating their own emotions, a lot of difficulty. And so they already have difficulty with their own emotions, and they can't stand other people's emotions. So when they're in a relationship with another person, obviously things come up. Their partner could be, feeling certain ways. They could be going through things that will really create a lot of anxiety in the dismissively attached person. These are the kind of people that, I don't understand why you can't just calm down, or why you can't act rationally, or why we can't just kind of logic through this and think through this. Because in reality, they're so freaked out about the emotional state of their partner. They're so scared, so afraid that they are not going to be able to help their partner and that they are going to be overwhelmed. And then they have these ideas about what it means to be overwhelmed in a relationship. To them, they need as little stress as possible so that they can maintain whatever independent lifestyle that they have. So they think that, for example, if they have a relationship, it's going to be emotionally overwhelming for them, so then their career might suffer. Maybe they're going to suffer at their job. Maybe they're not going to be able to have as much focus. Maybe other areas of their lives are going to suffer. They have this idea that they're somehow going to be derailed through a relationship, and so they kind of don't see the relationship as having as much value to them, as much worth to them, because they feel like it's just a distraction from the independent life that they want to be living. And so they're kind of, comfortable. They've already built out these strategies to be able to deactivate their emotions. So they're kind of comfortable. And of course, a lot of the times, the strategies that they use to deactivate their emotions are very unhealthy. So using alcohol, using drugs, using sex, using food, in order to be able to numb the emotions in them. And, these things like alcohol and drugs, right? They are consistent. They are stable. They are not going anywhere. You can always have a drink. You can always, use whatever substance of your choice in order to kind of regulate your emotions. Now, people are very unpredictable. Another thing that dismissive people tend to do is they usually have a lot of superficial relationships. And that also has to do with friends. They might have some drinking buddies. They might have people that, maybe they play games. So maybe they'll be on a soccer team. So they'll be friends with kind of buddies with people there. But the relationships tend to be superficial because they have a lot of difficulty, being vulnerable, talking about the relationships. And that's one of the things that really, creates an emotional connection, is the ability to be able to do that and also to relate to other people. Dismissive avoidants are going to form their relationships in a way that they have the upper hand. So they're going to place themselves in a position where they are somehow superior to their partner. And that, they'll form it in a way, maybe they'll start to overly criticize their partner. They're going to start to try to make their partner feel like, you're not really good enough for me. Or, I just don't know if you really meet my expectations. And this it's very unconscious, and they do this in very subtle ways, but their partner does feel that, and thus they gain an upper hand. And then when their partner, for example, approaches them with them, then they can call their partner needy and insecure and kind of blame the partner. So this is one of the ways that they create a little distance between themselves and their partner, where they have the upper hand. They might try to spend a lot of time away from their partners. They always have, their friends, their hobbies, their jobs. Workaholism can, by the way, fall into this category as well. Just people that like to work a lot and they spend a lot of time at work, is one of the things they're avoiding their families. They're avoiding having more emotional connection with their spouses. And sometimes, you also have to look at whether the dismissive person, or are you extroverted or introverted? Because sometimes the extroverted people, the dismissive partners, they're always going to have friends. They're always going to have something that they can do with this, with this girlfriend and this buddy and this club. But the introverted people actually don't have as much to do, so they end up spending more time with their partners. But that doesn't mean, just because they're spending a lot of time with their partners, doesn't mean that they're fully emotionally connecting. So they're going to use a variety of deactivating strategies, even though they're spending a lot of time with their partners. They're home a lot. So one of the deactivating strategies is also to look for all the negative things in their partners. That could be physical appearance. So they can be hyper-focused on whatever things that they don't like about, their partner, and they're going to put it in their brain and they're just going to lock it in there. So then they're going to see their partner in kind of more negative light. It could be personality traits. So they're looking at their partner's negative personality traits, little annoying things that their partner does. They can get hypercritical over it. They're going to lock it into their mind, and they're going to kind of spin these stories in their mind. Another thing is that they focus on the grass is greener on the other side. So they can, focus on their past relationships, and all of a sudden they start to idealize their past partners rather than focusing on their current relationship and their current partners. They could be falling in love with people that they're never going to be with, like actors or people that are unavailable, maybe their bosses sometimes that are married or whatnot. Definitely people that they're not in real life going to actually have a relationship with. They are going to avoid emotional connection during sex. They don't know how to emotionally connect, so they keep it to something that's very physical. And they generally have difficulty talking about sex and kind of developing their sex life with their partner. A lot of the times the avoidants will prefer to have multiple partners and kind of very superficial relationships in that regard. So also, if the dismissive, the avoidant person is not in a relationship, it is very likely that they're going to create scenarios for themselves that are going to keep them disattached. So for example, for men, it could be, like if they can be kind of like playboys. So they can have multiple women that they see, they don't really get attached to any of the women. And that kind of puts this illusion in their mind that they're kind of in a relationship and they have all this excitement with all these women, all these relationships, but they never really connect with anyone. They never really connect with anybody. And this can last for years. This can last their entire life, where they substitute the multiple relationships they have for the one relationship, and that way they never have to connect. If one of their partners or lovers disappears, no big deal, because they have many more, so they don't feel like they're going to be hurt. This is one of the things that they can do to protect themselves, is to mingle with a lot of people, and that way they know that they're never going to be hurt, because if somebody falls out, then they have plenty more, and they can always, call up somebody else and spend time with whoever else. Another thing that they can do is they can get involved with people that don't live in their city, that maybe live in another country, people who they know, people who are married, people who they know they're never really going to form a bond with. And once again, that creates an illusion of, being in a relationship, kind of being with somebody so they don't feel as lonely, they have somebody to think about. But then they avoid the real connection of a relationship. And this can last a lifetime too. And I noticed that for women and men tend to function differently with this attachment style. Women can get involved in a relationship, and the first stages of the relationship they really enjoy, especially that for a woman, it's still more likely that she wants a family, right? For the status quo, she wants maybe to have children, she wants to have this experience of being married, not so much to want to have a long-term emotional connection. Those are very different things. So a woman might want all these things, and then the beginning stages of the relationship, that's filled with lust and excitement, and maybe she finds some man who's really great and they have a lot of adventures together, and that's fine. But she never really forms a long-term emotional connection with her partner. So over a few years, she falls out of love. So you'll see this in kind of serial monogamous, like they'll be in a relationship for 2-3 years and everything is great, and then they fall out of love. Why? Is because they never really formed a vulnerable emotional connection. Maybe they, kept a lot of their emotions locked in. They weren't aware of them. They were strategizing around how to maintain a relationship in the first place. But then when that excitement fell away, then their deactivating strategies kind of kicked in. They started seeing their partner in a very critical light. They started to hyper-focus on all the bad things about their partner, about the relationship, and their deactivating strategy kind of worked in a way that cut the partner out, and boom, they fell out of love, and maybe they fall in love with somebody else and they leave the partner. So the women are not really able to form any kind of long-lasting emotional bond. They can't attach like that. That's why it's called insecure attachment. They don't get securely attached to other people because it's dangerous. Fundamentally, they think it's dangerous. So they use all kinds of strategies to not do that. With men, it is much more likely for them to be involved in a series of relationships. Some life circumstance can bring them to be in one relationship, maybe to even get married. Maybe they want to have children. Usually they're going to want to try to spend a lot of time away from their partner, and it is kind of necessary for them to actually do that, because they can feel suffocated. They really do feel very emotionally overwhelmed, and they are going to find ways to kind of distance themselves and spend some time on a lot of time on their own, and that can leave their partner very frustrated. And once again, the same as with women, if they use all these deactivating strategies to never really get close, then eventually their emotions are going to disintegrate as well, and the relationship is going to fall apart. So that is pretty much dismissive, anxious in a nutshell. Thinking if I forgot anything. I think that's it for this video. You can change your attachment styles in 2 ways. You can work to change your attachment style. Well, first of all, if you are in a relationship right now and you're happy, let's say you are avoidant and your partner is avoidant too, and you both are very cool and you're spending time away from each other, and when you are together, you're making sure you don't overwhelm one another, and you're happy in the relationship that works for you, that's great. You don't even really need to work on anything, even though you recognize yourself in this, that's fine. But if you are having problems in the relationship with your partner, if you are struggling in relationships, if you've had several relationships that have failed and you're trying to figure out, what's going on here, what's the pattern, probably a good idea to look into your attachments, to learn more about it, and to try to get what we call an earned secure attachment. So it's possible to kind of rise from your current attachment style and become more secure in order to have more fulfilling relationships, a higher degree of emotional intimacy, and just derive more joy, more happiness from your relationships. So the way you do that is, number one, you definitely have to do it in a relationship, because all your traumas happened when you were in a relationship, whether it was a relationship with your parents, whether something traumatic happened, like someone close to you maybe passed away when you were young. It was a relationship with maybe your first love, maybe you were in a relationship, maybe somebody cheated on you or treated you disrespectfully somehow, some form of trauma happened. Whatever it was, it happened around other people. And so the only way to heal that is to have a relationship with other people. And that could be your therapist. It could be, very supportive friends that you really trust, somebody you can really talk to. It can be your current romantic partner. Definitely don't give up on romance. A lot of people feel like, oh, I really have to fix myself, I have to change this, I have to change that, and then I'll be good enough for a relationship. That is absolute nonsense. You're always good enough for a relationship. All of us are flawed. All of us have, some challenges, struggles that we're going to. That does not mean that we can't engage in romantic relationships. So definitely, if you're single and you're looking for a romantic relationship, be really mindful of these attachment styles going in. It's a great conversation to have with your partner. I included a link to the test that you can take to help you figure out your attachment style, and you can give it to your potential partner as well and discuss these things. Definitely, therapists can help. And the second thing is work on yourself. So learning about these attachment styles, learning about your patterns, figuring out how you view the world that might be detrimental to you. What views of relationships do you have that might not be serving you well? What views of potential partners, same sex or other sex, that you have that might be working against you and working against your relationship? Seeing your patterns of how you view your partner and the kind of things that you look for, and what is it that you focus on? How do you use your attention, memory, and your interpretation of the situations that could be working against you or against your current relationship? So all things to be very mindful of, but also, just because you can change your thoughts, or just because you can recognize or be aware of your thoughts, does not mean that you're actually going to change your patterns, because they're so deeply ingrained inside of you, and your emotional part of your brain isn't really connected to your logical part of the brain in that way. Because when you think about the ability to fall out of love with someone, that's impossible, right? Like, if you really love somebody, you can break out of the relationship with the person, you can choose not to see them, but you're not going to be able to actually fall out of love with them. Now, if you're dismissively attached, it might be much easier. You could be tricking yourself that you are out of love with your partner. Most likely, you are going to fall out of love much quicker, because you were never that attached to begin with. So it's definitely much easier for the dismissive. But generally, if you have an emotional desire for something, it's very difficult to talk yourself out of it, no matter how smart you are. So see that those are two different parts of your brain, and they don't exactly communicate in a way of, change your thoughts, change your emotions. It's much more complex than that. So sign up to my channel, because I will be making more videos talking about that. And I'm going to make more videos about attachment styles and go into detail with them. Also, check out my workshop for adult children of alcoholics. If you grew up in a household where drugs and alcohol were abused, this is an 8-week course that might be very helpful for you. I also do one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in getting a consultation with me, you can also find the link below. I hope you have a great week. Until next